I do want to bring in a guest for the 7 o'clock hour. He's going to be joining us the whole entire hour. Douglas Box. He's a family business advisor and an author. And I've got 2 books here in front of me. And when you hear his story, Michael, it is really remarkable of the life that he's lived. A little bit of a celebrity life at one point.
It was. I kind of grew up like JR did.
On South Fork Ranch.
On the South Fork Ranch, that's right.
And when you say that he grew up on the South Fork Ranch, he literally grew up on the South Fork Ranch for 5 years. They filmed that TV show in your house.
Actually, Brian, it was just the first 6 shows. They
6
did the
shows.
Mini series, they called it a pilot.
The pilot.
They did the pilot there for the first 5 or 6 shows, and then they came back and said, we want to do a full series here. And my dad said, you're not doing the series here because this would go on as long as Gunsmoke, and they kicked him off a ranch.
So is that what he envisioned, this thing going on for years and going, you know what, this is just going to be a disruption in my life?
Yes, he was afraid of that because he was a big horseman. I mean, he was real adamant about his horse operation. He was really afraid they were going to disrupt everything.
And you're probably all for it at the time.
I was all for. Oh yeah,
you got cameras and Hollywood movie stars coming to your house.
Exactly, absolutely. Who wouldn't want Hollywood on their front doorstep?
And you are you advise families that are engaged in business, and you kind of help them work out the future, in which we'll get into a whole lot of that later in this hour as well, because I would imagine dealing with a family-owned business can get kind of tense at time.
Let me put it like this, Brian. Everyone knows families that don't talk to each other anymore. Everyone knows families that there's some cutoffs, there's some estrangement there, and it's almost always money. And so I don't know if it's a botched inheritance or something the executor didn't do right, but when you put money and family together, watch out. Watch out.
The fireworks will fly.
Yes.
And kind of, you got a backstory how you've got to that point that you do that today in this current time. So we'll get to that in a little bit. But did you get a chance to watch the speeches last night?
I did not.
No?
Yourself?
No, I did not. And we're going to get into that because I know that, did you watch them 2 nights ago?
Yes, I did.
Yes. Good stuff.
Yeah, great stuff.
Very engaging stuff. And I hope that all of America is watching these. Let's get back to our guest in studio, Douglas Box. He's a family business advisor. He's an author. He's got 2 books here. They're both memoirs of him growing up in the original South Fork Ranch. And also, the Texas Patriarch is about it's about kind of your legacy. You're dealing with the past and preparing for the future, and what you do with family businesses today.
Exactly, Brian. This is really Texas Patriarch is really written as a cautionary tale to families with substantial resources. And the whole point of the book really is that families need to work harder and be smarter about forward planning and about trying to protect their assets, their family's money, and their family legacy. So that's why main reason why I wrote the book.
And the majority, there's a lot of family-owned businesses in America, without a doubt.
Yes.
I mean, small businesses, there's more small businesses than large corporations.
And most of them won't fail. Most of them will not succeed beyond the founders passing. They'll fail after the first generation.
Is that because the second generation's just not trained, or they don't want to?
Usually it's because they haven't had a succession plan put in place, and so when something happens to the owner or the founder, everything changes too abruptly, and the family can't handle it, and they end up selling the business or going out of business or running it into the ground.
Okay, and of course you have a little bit of history. You're not only you're speaking from the heart when you know from experience, because this happened to you.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. We did not have a succession plan. We did have a lot of estate planning done. My dad had a will. We had a lot of very good estate planning things in place, but succession planning is a little bit different than estate planning, and we didn't have a succession plan because it deals more with the family stuff, whereas estate planning is dealing with stock and assets. As succession planning is dealing more with the human element in a family business. And if you think about what a family business is, that's what really holds it together, is the influence of the family.
Let's talk about your dad. He was larger than life.
Yes, he was. Yeah, my dad, my father was just a phenomenal man. He was a guy named Cloyce Box, and he scaled the American dream, born into poverty on a small farm in central Texas, played professional football for the Detroit Lions back in their heyday, back in the 50s. The Lions, believe it or not, is still my favorite team, but there's not been much to root for these last
And not too
50
bad,
years.
you know.
So, but he played on one of the old great Lion teams with Doak Walker and Bobby Lane, Yale Larry, and Leon Hart, and people like that. And they went to the World Championship 3 years in a row. 52, 53, and 54. This is way back before your time, Brian.
Mm-hmm.
And
this is not leather helmets now, is it? Is
actually, it is.
Oh, this is leather helmets.
Leather heads. Yes,
leather heads.
No face mask.
He's tough.
Yeah,
was tough.
these were tough guys. You know, but if you think about it, because they didn't have face masks, they really couldn't hit that hard, right? Or couldn't hit as hard.
They couldn't lead with the head, is what you're saying.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
It makes sense to me. But anyway, it's just a different game back then. But Dad was really an extraordinary figure, and he's an interesting person who climbed the American dream, scaled the American dream, rather, and then toward the end of his life did some things that were sort of overreaching, and we didn't have a lot of planning in place. And the four sons, I being the youngest of the four, when we sort of inherited the business from him, we also inherited a lot of trouble, a lot of mess that he sort of left us behind because we hadn't done this good planning. And so today that's why I'm doing the thing that I am, and that's what the books are designed to do, to sort of support my public speaking business and my consulting business to family-owned companies. It's a very underserved market. There's a huge number of family companies out there. They all, I shouldn't say they all, but a great percentage of them will struggle with the same sort of issues that we did.
There we go. In the studio, we have Douglas Box. He's with the Box Family Advisors, located right here in Dallas. The website is boxfamilyadvisors.com.
Right on.
And we'll talk more about that. Plus, I'm going to find out what it's like growing up in the South Fork Ranch. Check the Wall Street before we go to break. Dow up 52, S&P up 5, and the NASDAQ up 13, 731. Give us a few. We'll come right back. There it is, the very familiar song of the hit show Dallas, which Douglas Box of Box Family Advisors, and author of 2 books. One of them is Cutter Frisco, and I guess that book is loosely about your growing up in the South Fork Ranch home.
It is. It's about the old ranch that's still up there in Frisco, and you were telling me before the show that you drive by there every day on your way to McKinney, yeah. And I call it the Stonehenge of Frisco. It's this skeletal structure that people think is under construction, and it's not, and it's been that way for years.
Unbelievable. Okay, let me backtrack. And how did all of this happen? How did Hollywood find this particular location in North Texas?
So Lorimar Production Company was headed by a guy named Leonard Katzman back in the 70s, and they were going to start a new show called Dallas. But they were going to do a pilot, which is 5 or 6 shows, like a little mini-series. But they needed to find a South Fork, a big ranch, a big house to serve as the South Fork Ranch. And so the then mayor of Dallas was a guy named Bob Folsom. He knew my dad. He called my father and said, "Hey, Cloyce, we need to change the image of Dallas because it is known as the city of hate. It's known where JFK was gunned down in 1963, and there's this new show to come into town, and it's going to be a wholesome family show, and we want to see this show succeed, blah, 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 and they want to use your ranch up in Frisco. Will you let them film there?" And he said, "Sure." And they did the 5 shows there, and then after doing the first 5 shows, they came back and they said, "We want to do the full series here. Can we do the full series here on an ongoing basis?" And Dad said, no. He made them leave and kicked them off the ranch.
Okay, and they described this show as a family wholesome show.
Yes, they did.
Boy, they sold that, didn't they?
Yeah, they sold that one pretty good.
What are some of the reasons why your dad didn't want this production? Because like we said, we were talking in the break that if someone called me and said they want to shoot at my house in McKinney, I'd say yes, and they wouldn't offer. You were not compensated for this.
No, they didn't pay our family a dime.
So what are some of the reasons why your dad didn't want him there?
Well, you have to understand, when they bring a film crew out on location, it's like a small army descending upon your property. these people were all union-based. They were all from L.A., and so they had to have huge paddy wagons of food brought out, big 18-wheel trucks. They have all kinds of grips and extras, and it's like a small army. They have to feed all these people. And 100 people can leave behind a lot of trash.
So there was a lot of activity on the property, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of wear and tear.
Now, what was your thoughts on all of this?
I couldn't get enough of it.
You couldn't get enough of it. You were in college, right?
Yeah, I was at the University of Texas in Austin as a sophomore, and I called home one day to talk to my mom, and she just happened to very passively say that there's a film crew shooting out here, and I thought nothing of that, and so I had to run home and see what that was all about.
Of course, you then dropped out of school and drove straight to Frisco. And when you got there and you found out some of the superstars, you saw the beautiful women, and
that's when you met Victoria Principal.
Yeah,
exactly.
No, I'm
Actually, it was
awesome.
There you go. What was your thoughts when you first came back home for the first time and saw the TV crew?
My thought was Hollywood had come to town, and it was like a major production. I mean, I know some people think of that show as kind of being, goofy or, a soap opera or whatever, but make no mistake about it, these people were completely professional. I mean, they came here to win, and they worked hard. They got up early in the morning and stay late. They worked really, really hard. People think that the TV movie business is kind of glamorous, but it's hard.
It's long hours. Yeah.
Yeah, long hours.
Okay, so they do the first 5 pilots.
Yeah, the first 5 episodes. Yeah.
And your dad says no.
Mm-hmm.
Get out.
Yeah. Yep, he does. And then they go on to find this other ranch in Parker, Texas, known as the Joe Duncan Farm. And that becomes the South Fork Ranch that's still standing today. So I don't want to confuse people. There's actually 2 South Forks. There's the one in Frisco, which is the original one, but then there's the South Fork Ranch in Parker.
I think most Dallas history buffs knew that.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a great.
But it's easy to confuse it because they chose the South Fork based on its resemblance to our place.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They were both big white houses.
Right.
They were trying to fool the audience.
They were. Any regrets later? Obviously, the show became hugely successful. Did your dad or yourself go, why did we have this show at our house?
My dad had no regrets at all because he had no regrets at all. He didn't need them. My dad was, as I said earlier, he was larger than life. He had a business to run. He was a very successful oil and gas guy, construction. He didn't want Hollywood stomping around his ranch. He didn't need that. But I needed it desperately.
Yeah, of course. As a college kid, who doesn't want that in their front yard?
Exactly. Who doesn't want Linda Gray and Victoria Principal hanging around?
Hey, I met Linda Gray 2 years ago at an
Really?
event. It was for, I think, a vodka company or something like. Oh, no, it was for actually a promo for the Dallas show that was shooting here. And she's a beautiful woman.
Oh, she's
beautiful woman. I mean, smoking.
Inside and out.
Inside and out. And I don't know what her age is. I couldn't even guess if she's 60, maybe.
No. Well, I'm not going to say on the air.
I don't even know.
Charlene Tilton is 57.
Okay, so she might be right there. Right, beautiful woman.
Yeah. I like Linda too much. I know how old she is. I'm not going to say her age on the air.
Sweet as can be. Okay,
absolutely.
But that experience, along with you said your dad was larger than life, a hugely successful businessman. Didn't necessarily he passed that business down to your.
Yeah, he tried to.
Mm-hmm. And that's when you guys. Mm-hmm. I don't want to use the word squandered. Is that a word?
No, I wouldn't say squandered. It's just that when you go from one owner to 4 owners, I mean that becomes a much more complex system, and you've got to have a process in place or at least a plan in place to sort of manage that intergenerational conflict between 4 brothers who, frankly, we got along well as kids, but when we started working together, we found out we were not very compatible. So some of the things that we forgot to do or we didn't do is we didn't have a buy-sell agreement. Most family-owned companies need to have a buy-sell. One of the worst cases I ever worked on as an outside consultant was 3 partners, 2 of whom died unexpectedly, and they had no buy-sell. And the two remaining tried to force the one out, and they lawyered up and it destroyed the whole enterprise. And I tried to get involved, but it was too late. It was like a house on fire, and it was just is out of control.
So this Texas Patriarch, is this loosely based on those experiences with your dad in the whole process of a family-based company moving from one generation to the other?
Yeah, this is a chronicle of my dad's rise and then what happened after he suddenly died, and the 4 sons were left with a business in turmoil without a plan. And so the whole purpose of this book really is to motivate and inspire families to plan while you can.
Plan while you can.
Plan while you can.
Douglas Box joining us in the studio. He's a family business advisor, and is an author of 2 books, Cutter Frisco and Texas Patriarch. Great covers, by the way. Yeah, that's you on top of that horse.
Yeah, can't you tell?
Yeah,
don't I look the same?
I'm going to tweet that out here, and I'll send the picture to you in a second, Michael. Good looking stuff there. So I would imagine to this day you meet several business-owned companies that they just don't have it together. They don't have a plan.
They're all over the map.
They're all over the map.
Some people have done a very good job. I like to say that I see 2 kinds of patients. I see sick patients, and I see healthy patients that are trying not to get sick. And you can well imagine the latter is a lot easier to work with. I really like to work with families that are trying to be proactive. They're trying to, go forward. The ones that are already in conflict, really tough cases.
Okay. Let's take a break. We come back and see if you have some advice for some family-owned companies to help you avoid just kind of falling apart. It's 7:44. Stick around. We'll come right back.
JR, I didn't come here to hurt you. I just want to know where Kristen is.
Sue Ellen, I brought you things.
Regular angel of mercy, aren't you? So supportive. Keeping my secrets, taking me in.
What happened? What are you talking about?
I have finally figured everything out, that's all. You have been trying to frame me.
The scene there from Dallas. Who shot JR? That was the biggest question. I remember, in the 80s, I was just a kid when this was going on, but I do remember this series. And, of course, so does our guest in the studio, Douglas Box. He's a family business advisor from Fox Family Advisors, author of 2 books. And oddly enough, you probably are familiar with this scene as well. This could have been shot in your house if your dad just would have said yes. I'm a little bitter about that, actually.
I am very bitter about it, Brian. Had a lot of therapy for that, by the way.
Let's kind of tie this all up in a bow if we could. So you take all of this experience of not only dealing with the show, and that's a great story, but you're dealing with the experience of your dad and you and your brothers trying to get together and push that family business on, but now your goal is to help other family-owned businesses.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is really my passion, and I know it's my passion because I've been doing it for 11 years now, and it's hard work working with families. Some of the things that I think that families really need to do, first of all, is have a plan. Even if it's not a good plan, have a game plan for the next generation. And I like to tell families, don't sell your business. If it's becoming a situation where you can't run it yourself, bring in somebody else who can run it, but stay in control of it in terms of the ownership, because I can't think of a business today that's not worth a lot more, or it's not worth a lot more today than it was 20 years ago, be it a real estate business, an IT business, financial services, oil, you name it. I mean, if you can hold on to your family enterprise, I think throughout the generations, it's really going to add a lot to your family. And so I try to get families I try to basically be a strategic partner for the purpose of continuity to continue the business forward into the future.
So that's a little bit of advice you would have for them.
Yes.
It's just to try to do everything they can to keep it together. Keep it together. It's worth more together than broken apart.
Yeah, every situation is very different, very unique. And so I shouldn't, give advice from the podium here, but that's just kind of my overarching bias, sort of based on my own experience, that over time, most businesses will appreciate and value. And so if you can just hold on to that business. Now, if there are strategic reasons to sell your company, go for it. But a strategic reason to sell is not that your family has conflict. If you sell your family business because you have conflict in your family, it's probably going to make it worse, not better. So don't fall into that trap. And so I try to do whatever I can as a strategic partner for family-owned companies to get them to manage their internal squabbles outside of the media or outside of the courthouse. And that's another thing. Never go to court with your family. The courthouse is no place to resolve anything. The guy that wears a robe to work every day, he doesn't care about your family problems.
How often do you see that it gets to the court?
I see that more than I want to see it. It happened in our family. I've gotten involved as an outside advisor to families on the verge of lawyering up, or maybe they already have lawyered up. And for a family, it's no different than a divorce. If you get a divorce in your family, it's it's not going to destroy the family, but it's going to create a different kind of family. And a family business divorce is something you do not want to go through.
Yeah. Where do you, what would you say if you had, 4 brothers and 2 of them just want nothing to do with it? They don't,
Yeah.
They want to remain a part of the company, but they don't really have any interest.
Sure.
There's not their passion.
We talked about this a little bit earlier, Brian. I think it's very important for every family enterprise to think about putting a buy-sell agreement in place, which determines how partners who want to leave a family firm, siblings in this case, as you say, how they value the company, how their portion of it is sold back to the corporation, and there's got to be a process in place up front to do that. That's called a buy-sell agreement. And the real key to that is funding. I've seen a lot of buy-sell agreements, but it's rare for me to see one that is funded by life insurance, by sort of like an irrevocable life insurance trust that you can set up where the proceeds of the life insurance go back to the corporation, allowing the company to then acquire the stock of the person who is, in this particular case, deceased. So a funded buy-sell is one of my top my top recommendations when I come into a company. I always want to see a buy-sell, and it's ideally if it can be funded through some life insurance.
All right. The website is boxfamilyadvisors.com. The telephone number is 214-361-9800. That's 214-361-9800. The books are called Cutter Frisco and Texas Patriarch. Both looks like they seem like good reads. I mean, they're both very different.
Yeah, they're very different books.
Very different books. And definitely, where can someone pick up these books?
They're available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and you can always ask for it at your local bookstore.
There you go. I like it. So if I drive by that location, let's describe to our listeners real quickly exactly where it's at, because I want people to have a chance to at least drive by.
Sure. So Frisco, Texas, Main Street, which is also known as Farm Road 720, and Preston Road, which is also known as State Highway 289. That's the northeast corner there. It's the old center of town. It's now called the Brinkman Ranch. And well, for 31 years, it was the Box Ranch, except we never put up a sign.
Never put up a sign. And the population of Frisco at that time was?
When we first moved there, it was 2,000. Over the next 10 years, it went to 1,800.
Yeah, it declined. That's probably the first time ever in Frisco's history.
And now it's what, 1 million?
No, it's not 1 million, but it's it's headed that way, Mike.
It seems like that, and that's why I moved the opposite direction.
McKinney is 155, 152.
155, 152. That's the population.
It's a population. I think Frisco is slightly smaller.
I'm happy to be in a small town, population barely 20,000.
20,000.
Yeah.
Good, nice and quiet for you.
It is.
Because I will say this: a lot of traffic in Frisco.
Oh my!
We get like diesel traffic. Yeah, I can hear the freeway from my house.
From jack braking.
Right.
And the term.
But the city just put up stop signs on my street, and I'm so happy because it's not so many diesel trucks come by my house
He got
now.
stop signs now.
If you look at a Google map of Frisco, there is really nothing to stop the growth of that town.
No, there's not.
I mean, there's tons of stuff
plenty
developed,
of land.
but
Yeah.
there is plenty of vacant land up there.
Yeah.
And it's going to be growing for the next 30 years. And
Well, if you jump over 380, is that Prosper right there, though? Is that Prosper?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I will say that there's plenty of land. If you go down Main and you go east on Main, on north and south sides of Maine, there's plenty of fields. There's plenty of land.
Well, I was going to say the Brinkman Ranch itself, our old ranch is 2,500 acres. You could put the entire town of Old Frisco in Brinkman's property line.
All right, well,
Crazy.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you,
Interesting
Brian. It's great
stuff.
to be here.
All right, stick around. We got more DFW Business Day coming up after the break.